Hello and welcome to this latest podcast from the Terrace. I am your host Craig Fowler and this is going out on YouTube and to our Patreon subscribers on audio. I am joined by Euan Taylor.
Hello, Craig.
Hello, Euan. And we are going to be discussing the issue, if we want to say it's an issue, we'll get to that, around the lack of opportunities for young players in the Scottish top flight. So this has obviously been a topic that is discussed at length throughout recent years, and I know Michael Stewart's brought up quite a lot on the radio. The reason why we're talking about it now is that earlier this month, I think it was yourself, Euan, shared a Twitter post from Cameron Campbell, who is a talent coach who works for RB Leipzig, but he previously worked for Rangers and Aberdeen. So a Scottish guy who pointed out that Scottish young players disproportionately don't get many minutes. So he brought out this Twitter graphic. So to briefly sum it up, it is players born between the years of 2004 and 2007. So that would make them, it's quick maths, 20 or 17 at this point in time. And how many minutes they get in the season he done it up until the 26th of February. So he has, like, the Eredivisie is 19,752 minutes. He's got the Superliga, 15,730 minutes. La Liga, 13,000. Premier League, 12,000. Scottish Premiership, 6,947. Then he breaks it down per team. Celtic, Livingston, and I've pointed this out before, Livingston, the lack of minutes they're giving to young players this season in a squad of 25 senior pros, mental for a club that apparently has no money. 25 minutes. Rangers 74, so all those teams have under 100 minutes for those players in those age ranges this season, and nobody else really feeling much better. Motherwell and Killie are the only ones with over 1,000 minutes for their players. Now, some of these leagues are bigger, I think we should maybe point out as well, but still, you want Scottish football to be higher up in terms of minutes given to young players than 6,947. So, Euan, do we have a problem here?
I think this really depends on your view about what you want Scottish football to be. Now, I think if you're sort of defining how Scottish football is structured at the moment, you're looking for like one word across to sum up like the four senior leagues. I would say it's competitiveness. That's the that is the sort of the driver for the way the whole thing is structured. Now, you might laugh at that, obviously, in terms of the top of the league, because it's there's obviously two teams which are vastly over-resourced compared to the rest of the country, and that has a competitive imbalance, which is another conversation about how that would be fixed.
Yes.
But in general, all the leagues are structured in a way to minimise the amount of meaningless games, to make every team almost every team have something to play for come the end of the season, be that relegation or promotion or top six or Europe or wherever, as you go through the leagues. And I think that overriding structure, which just on that basis, you can say, well, of course that's a good thing. There's a lot of interest in the games. It's fun. It's teams panic all the time because they're not doing very well, or their goals for the season are something to the fingers. That is all great stuff in terms of interest and stuff for us guys like us to talk about. Entertainment, indeed. What it isn't great for is bleeding through young players, because all the games matter too much, and it requires very long-term thinking or someone to be exceptional for young players to actually get a chance. And that, I suppose, is what do you want Scottish football to be? Now, there's obviously I'm sure there's things that could be done to help have more young players in general. There are things you could think of in the sidelines, but I think that ultimately is I think that's probably how you want to approach it. Do you want Scotland to be a development league where we sell lots of clubs sell young players every summer to bigger leagues for decent money, and then that all just gets recycled in? and probably the overall standard of football improves? Or do you want what we've got just now, where maybe the standard isn't great, but it is fun?
Yeah, and that's... I suppose it comes down a lot of cases whether you are a clubman or a countryman. So
Yes.
Sean and Craig Anderson on the podcast would maybe more likely to say that they would prefer it if more young players were getting minutes and things were maybe changed. And all that. I'm not... Maybe that's not the case, because I know that Craig Anderson very much appreciates the competitiveness of the Scottish Premiership, and I know that Sean definitely appreciates the competitiveness of the Championship, where his club Wraith Rovers are.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they wouldn't. But if you're more concerned about the long-term health of the Scotland national team than you are to the Scottish top flight, then I would say that you do want something to be done about this and for things to change.
Mm-hmm.
I personally... Now, we'll get to the end if there's anything we can do. We'll wrap up by talking about whether there's possibilities for us to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But if you're going to say to me, young players are going to find it very hard to break into the first team, or the league is not as competitive as it is now, which would you prefer? I would much rather every game, or as many games as possible, counted in the Scottish top flight than Scotland being better. And I've hugely enjoyed the kind of renaissance of the Scotland national team and how it's brought a lot of the country kind of together in a football sense. It's something I've not really experienced. We've just kind of had mild to extreme discontent with Scotland for the vast majority of my time watching football, even towards the end of the times when we were good. Like, so I first started going to games in 1992. So I first started taking an interest in Scotland. I was a bit late to take an interest in Scotland, because I was very much kind of Hearts focused, and I hated how there was no Hearts players in the Scotland national team. But by the World Cup in '98, I was a Scotland fan. But even I can remember like the 4 years after that, where Scotland were still competitive, they did always seem to be like a more of an air of grumbling. While it's been good, I've appreciated why you want Scotland to do well, because it's good for the whole country to come together. I do think some of that is based on the fact that we were so rubbish for so long. So everybody's just like, oh, this is great, we're good again, the games matter. But if we're sustained good for a long period, the discontent will just come back anyway.
Yeah. Because it's all to do with your perceived... I think it's really to do with perceived progress, and that's why that period from 98 to 2000, but basically the end of the Craig Brown reign, I suppose, because people could tell that team was aging, and it wasn't really... there weren't that many young players coming through then, which was a problem. And then there was everyone could see things were getting worse, and then obviously things stayed worse and got worse and worse and worse for quite some time after that. So yeah, I mean that is certainly the case, and it's kind of difficult to... I mean, it's difficult to change a whole structure of a league just to suit something as nebulous as the national team, which is very... I mean, who's the best player in the Scotland national team for the last 12 months has been Scott McTominay. He had nothing to do with Scottish football. So, without him, would we have been successful over the last 12 months? Maybe we would have had, there are other good players that could slot in, but he's been a big reason for that.
Yeah, it kind of comes on to the factor as well that more young players are leaving Scottish clubs before they've played a game for Scottish clubs. Like the English, and it's only going to increase with the rules around the kind of restrictions now that English clubs in terms of Brexit, and also probably the kind of financial fair play stuff as well. That they are coming out and they're picking up more 16-year-olds who very likely would have played games for Scotland. Like one example you gave before is Ben Doak. If Ben Doak played at Celtic, he'd be in the regular rotation at Celtic as one of their wingers. But he left for Liverpool. Billy Gilmore, if he'd played... I know he doesn't fit into this age category now, but if he'd stayed in Scotland, signed his first contract for Rangers, stayed for 2 years, he would have been playing every week for Rangers. Maybe not immediately, but he would have certainly got himself to a point where he was 17, 18, and he was one of the first names on the team sheet. So there are guys who are those kind of standout talents who are being picked up. And then therefore it's a case of, do you just want a manager to pick somebody for the sake of picking them? And that's actually something else I want to come on to, but I'll go back to you first.
Yeah, no, and that is a big problem, potential problem. Could be a good thing. Could be our biggest and brightest. It's not good for the league, but it could be good for the the national team, and that you're the best and brightest get into like elite academies really early and then kick on from there. But it's probably, I think at best it's going to be a neutral thing where the very best, like a Billy Gilman, will make it, but then actually a lot of our best will just end up being sort of squad filler and massive English academies, and maybe not make it as well as if they'd stayed. I mean, it's actually an interesting contrast between the League of Ireland and Scotland, because obviously Ireland as a country has almost always outsourced its youth development after a certain age. If the best Irish players would have always left Ireland at 16 to go and play for to go to an English team, or the other one obviously would maybe even go to Celtic or other Scottish clubs, but they would go to the UK anyway, and they can't do that now, and that didn't really have any negative impact on their national team. You would say their national team has probably done pretty well, better than ours, unfortunately, over the last sort of 30 years anyway, but
not so much recently.
Not so much recently, no. Well, the chickens are coming home to roost in that, because they haven't put any structures in place whatsoever. They don't have youth development structures there because they've never had to. They just have like boys club stuff, and then players leave, and then the ones that don't make it come back and play in the League of Ireland sort of in their 20s. That's changed now because they aren't allowed. The Irish players aren't allowed to leave until they're 18 because of Brexit, so they can't go to the UK anymore. So they're actually staying, and even at that age group, that 16 to 18-year-old sort of age group, there are now loads of players in the League of Ireland playing and getting minutes, and then the clubs are finding it, they can then sell them to to other countries. So like some of them are going to Serie A, some of them are still going to England, but they're going with like first team experience, and you're actually seeing them in in the league. And I do wonder if that will be where we might see the growth, some growth of youth minutes. Obviously, Scottish players can go at 16. We will probably still lose the best, the absolute top talent. It doesn't matter if you're Rangers or Celtic or Hearts or Kilmarnock or whoever. You're probably going to lose the absolute standouts to England still. But it's I think you might see more of your Lennon Millers and your David Watsons getting minutes at like 16, 17, because clubs will know that you sort of need to you need to use them now, and that's the only way, because you will get some players will be advised. And I don't know. I imagine Lennon Miller had options to go down south, I would have thought, before he signed his professional contract. Although he was in Scotland, youth set up, and he scored that goal against England for, was it Scotland schoolboys from the halfway line. So I mean, he would have been obviously on the radar of some clubs in England, but he must have decided to stay at Motherwell. I don't know if that's because of his dad, and sort of thinking, having a bit sort of a longer term view of a footballer's career. But I think that might be, because you would imagine this summer that both Miller and Watson leave their respective clubs. I would have thought, just because I think they'll be rebought. They should get really good offers. I would have thought. So they both might be leaving at what, I don't know if Watson will be 19 in the summer. I think Miller's will be 18. I think. So they will still leave very early, but at least they'll have played like a season or a season and a half of first team football, and you'll have seen them, and they'll go for proper money. And that's, but it's hard to say, because those are the two standard. I think, and in that graph that we talked about at the start, I think Miller and Watson are responsible for the vast majority of those minutes, just themselves, because they played a lot. But it's I think clubs might need that. That is one way sort of you can tinker with it on the edges, and that I think clubs probably should try to get their best and brightest in earlier than they would otherwise, and you can't do it across. No one's saying, because of what we talked about at the start with the competitiveness nature. I don't think you can't do it with like half a team, because you get mauled.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it is the case that you could get more. You could definitely get, sort of, as I say, the best one should be playing, because otherwise you are going to lose them. Because if they're not playing, if Lennon Miller's, he might as well play for Aston Villa, under 23s, if he's not going to get a game for Motherwell first team. So you've got to to play these guys.
That's something that it should be taken into account as well. That it's a fairly new phenomenon, and especially this aspect of it where clubs from England are coming up. So that's always been a thing. Obviously, it's always been a thing, but they're coming up more and more. There's more of a frequency to it now, where they're coming in and picking up the brightest 16-year-olds. So clubs are still adjusting. Clubs are still learning that in order to keep on to the players, and they need to give them some type of assurances and set examples of other players who have had their chance, and say, right, if you play for us and you work hard like this guy, like if you work hard like Lennon Miller, we will give you a chance. And therefore, you will play first team football. You will play against Celtic and Rangers. You will play against teams that are the calibre of Champions League. You will play against some top teams. You will get some good experience. You will have good moments. You won't just be like, imagine for a young player, it's very easy to be kind of just wowed over by the glamour of going to a team. But you can say, like, well, you can actually play against, like, you go to Liverpool, you're not going to play against Man United. Not for a good few years anyway, if you're lucky. But if you say, well, you will play against Celtic and Rangers, and you will play at Parkhead, and you will play at Ibrox. And that is something they could do. Something I want to talk about is whether it is definitely the case. Because you do wonder, because everybody says, like, well, for young players to be good, then young players need opportunities. And obviously that is the case, in that they need some sort of opportunity, because young players can't be good unless they play any sort of football whatsoever. So it can't be that there's no opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes people talk about it, and that young players are going to be good if you just give them lots of playing time. In my life, I've seen a couple of Hearts teams where we really played loads of youngsters at the same time. One of them being the 13-14 season, when there was no choice. The club was in administration, loads of players had left. They had to play all the youngsters together. And the big success stories, there was a few success stories like that. The big one being Callum Patterson and Jamie Walker. Only one of them's actually gone on to play for Scotland. And then
not very well.
Yeah, not very well.
Yep.
And then you look at another example, like was it 17-18 season, where Craig Levein came in. The squad was a bit of a mess after the failed Ian Cathro reign. And then Levein played loads of young players that season. Loads of players made their debuts. The biggest success story out of that was probably Andy Irvine, who is fine, and he's doing a decent job, I think, in Austria at the moment. Yeah. Is he ever going to play for Scotland? Really don't think so. And I know those two examples, and that's too little. And if you say, yeah, you can maybe say, yeah, well, if you apply that to all teams, then you're going to get more players coming through more. And that could be the case. But what I would argue is, look at the English Premier League and look at the English national team. England have been one of the best teams in the world consistently for about, since 2002, you would maybe say?
Yeah, they've had their dips in that time, but yeah,
yes,
certainly in recent years they've been, probably, you'd have to say they've been good.
Yes, it's probably their most successful period in their history. They've not won a trophy, but they have massively underachieved at tournaments. But in terms of constantly qualifying and constantly being favoured amongst the teams to win the tournament and getting to latter stages of tournaments, this is the most successful English national team has ever been. Is that not a lot to do with the fact that all the money is a factor in it? Actually, I'll get to the money in a second. So let me just concentrate first on the competition. That to play in a lot of English players do not go abroad. Young players or players in general. So is it not to do with the fact that to become a player, to realise your dream of playing for whatever club you sign for, or to play in the top flight of English football, that's what you want to do. To realise that dream, you have to work really, really fucking hard and make a lot of sacrifices to get there, because it's just so hard to get there. But if you do get there, that makes you a better player. Now, I'm not saying that that's definitely the right way to do it, but I think it's a lot more complicated than people make it out when they just say young players need to be given a chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get you. It was almost like, the easier you make it, will you actually, not... we get worse players, because if everyone just gets a chance, then pressure makes diamonds and all that. And if there's no pressure, then everyone just gets it's easy to get in. I mean, football is obviously really hard to make it at any level. I mean, you can you've got your Mary Hill top on there. You can watch, like, the boys that play for Mary Hill are absolutely brilliant at football. Like, they're probably the best guys.
Every single one of them, so much better than me. There's not even any comparison to be made.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're all really, really good at football, and yet in the grand scheme of obviously professional football, they're rubbish. I'm afraid. No offense, Mary Hill. So there is difficult obviously to make it in football, but it's that extra, it is that bit, and it's that bit from basically being 16 to 21 probably, where that's where you either make it or you don't. Ultimately at the top level,
you do get some late bloomers.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, but I mean, even then, they're unlikely to be like top players.
Exactly. To play at that kind of level.
Yeah, so that is, and it's. And yeah, I mean, well, you're saying the Hearts examples. I mean, I suppose the Rangers example would be when Rangers were in the lower leagues. Now, people complained about youth players not getting as much of a chance in that time, but a lot of them did, and almost all of them were terrible. Like, the only good ones were Barry Mackay, who's obviously had a middling sort of career, really.
One cap for Scotland.
One cap. He has been capped. And Lewis McLeod, who did get one call up, but then just
it might have had a good career for Scotland if he wasn't very injury prone.
Yes. But that those were the only two, and loads of others got a chance, and they were all rubbish. Like Ryan Hardy, I suppose, would be another one that, like, he might get Scotland cap at some point. But that was when it was as easy as it's ever been to get into the Rangers team. It was obviously playing in the lower leagues, but there was a chance to sort of make it at Rangers, and hardly anyone did. So it doesn't really. I don't think more opportunity necessarily means that you will get a better national team out of it. I mean, obviously, I think it is. It's probably more to do clubs. The way clubs will look at it is, if they're willing to sacrifice league position by playing more young players, it would be with a view to making more money.
Yeah,
by selling them, and and then that being able to reinvest that in the team, and then it becomes a sort of virtuous circle where the other players around the young players are better, and they make the young players look better, and then you sell them for even more money, and then the whole thing, and then the actual team gets better. Whether that I think that's obviously harder to pull off than I've made it sound there. So, but I think that's where clubs will if they're going to give more of a chance to young players, that's the reason. That would have to be the reason. The other thing I suppose would come into is this: if this multi-club model thing becomes more prevalent, how that affects youth development in Scotland. I don't think,
because you're developing players for another
team.
That other team is that team is going to be in another country, and not Scottish players that you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that'd be. I mean, I'm sure if Hibs have like a standout youth player comes through at Hibs, I imagine they will now end up at Bournemouth. But I'm not sure that was the reason that the Doorbell Foley was interested in Hibs. I think it's more, we can sign players that aren't good enough for Bournemouth and give them to Hibs, and they might become good enough.
Yes, I think
that's more exactly now. Hibs sign hundreds of players every summer anyway, and they're just rubbish. So it's not, I suppose you could say, well, that doesn't really change anything, because it's not like Hibs are not signing players, but externally. But I think the youth academies will be even less of a. It would be like really an afterthought, because the whole thing with these multi-club models is, it does obviously affect the soul of a club. There's no question of it, because your club no longer exists on its own merits. It actually exists to service another club or clubs within a system, which is my big problem with it. I don't think it should be allowed, but the Cats seems to be out the bag with that, so there's not much that can be done. But yeah, that I think, because obviously the youth academy and youth players playing is a big part of the fabric of any club, and it should, fans do love it until they play like 5 games, and then often they become boo boys. But there's a romantic sort of thing of youth players coming through, and that could be. There
will no point be a time. There will no doubt be a point in the future where Hibs fans are outside the ground and banners saying, "We want our club back."
Oh yeah, absolutely, and and that will happen. I think for every club that ends up in this,
It'll be delicious as
web.
a Hearts fan because we tried to block it. Can we be like, we tried to save you, we tried to help.
You weren't for listening, but there's obviously there's rumours of other clubs. There's the Burnley Dundee thing. There's other clubs potentially interested in Scottish clubs, and you could see why if you're into this multi-club model. I think Scotland's probably quite a good place to do it for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's I don't think that'll be I think that'll be another factor that won't necessarily help. And then there are a lot of factors that and there's, I mean, the classic. I mean, obviously, if we were having this conversation, we would have mentioned the reserve league within like 10 seconds of the discussion beginning. And well, I mean, I just burst out laughing every time that gets mentioned. But as much as I laugh about that, there's a gerb of a point in there, in that I don't think the youth leagues are really fit for purpose. And there is that gap, and it's partly that they aren't fit for purpose because clubs tinkered around with it, and some of the clubs wanted to play, and the Colt sort of team idea, which seems to be dying a death now. But it's sort of because the clubs didn't think it was working, they've tried to change it, and now it's really not working because everyone's doing something different. But yeah, it's, I think something probably. I mean, whether you could probably call it a reserve league, and then everyone will it'll get a lot of support because people think that's what we should be doing for some reason. But clubs shouldn't be carrying my there's another big mine obviously, but clubs shouldn't be carrying loads of senior players that would fill out reserve teams, in my opinion. Yeah. Which would be another thing that would help bring through young players. But yeah,
there's just no need now, especially now in the 5 subs era. Back when reserve leagues were the way that the nostalgia shaggers like to talk about them, was that you would get 1 or 2 subs and you would have about 4 or 5 other pros that would need to play something because they weren't getting it in the squads. Nowadays you have squads of like 20 odd players. You shouldn't have that many, but the teams will have squads that big. But you'll get 9 players on a bench, 5 of whom can come on. And so your players who normally would be in a reserve team are getting regular minutes now. And also there's loads of other reasons, but we're not talking about reserve leagues.
No. But yeah, that's something that they probably that probably needs to be addressed, and it would help slightly, I think, in terms of bridging that sort of gap between, yes, I suppose 16 to 20.
But there is something to be said there in the bloated squads and how that is causing a problem, and it's something I wrote about earlier in the season. I've talked about as well, shite bag economics, and that and going back to my point earlier about young players in the English Premier League and how that helps. Another thing that helps young players coming through in England, like not only do they have to be really good to get to that level, and that pressure makes them better players, but also they get so much better coaching, and they're playing against better players. And if you're playing against somebody in training, and you're A, picking up things, B, you get the confidence that, I belong here, then that makes you better at football. Then Scottish clubs could maybe say, well, we want to do the same. We want to grow the league, and to grow the league in the interim period, you want to get in as many good players as possible to create that same sort of environment. Clubs get more money because they're more successful, blah, blah, blah. I don't think our clubs are necessarily getting better.
No.
And I think we are flooding our squads with too many aging journeymen, too many jobbers, and that is a big issue, I think, with the Scottish top flight. Not only from the sense of what we're talking about right now, but just from an entertainment aspect. Squads are too big, there's too many crap players. It's just, there's not a lot of teams that are fun to watch at the moment.
No. And I think that does go back to the competitiveness, this thing again as well. And I suppose like what would you rather watch, like a really interesting tactical battle between 2 teams playing very different styles but both quite progressive, and it's like 2 each, but the teams are 6th and 8th in a 16-team league, and there's not that much on the line for it? Or would you like to watch like a horrible 2 teams playing back 5s against each other, long balls, but there's a last minute winner, and that means that one team gets in the top 6 and one team doesn't? And
You're basically talking about Dundee United Aberdeen from about 10 years ago.
yeah. So it's like, is there? There are different ways to enjoy football, and Scotland obviously has veered quite a lot towards the latter there in terms of that's what we sort of we like, and we talk that up in it on the podcast, and we enjoy that, but it's if certainly if you were taking it sort of as an aesthetic, as an overall picture, would we enjoy it more if all the teams played better football? Yes, but will that ever happen in the current league structure? And
I mean, you're talking about the competitiveness. It's because there is so much peril all the time for managers, because there's just so much at stake. If you lose 5 games in a row, you could find yourself, if you are a Hearts, Hibs or Aberdeen, you could find yourself well out of the European places, and that could be an issue that fans want you sacked. If you're a club, even if you're Celtic or Rangers manager. I mean, obviously, if you lose 5 games in a row, that would just be what the fuck has happened here? Like, that never happens. But like a string of poor results like that would cost you a title in many seasons, and lower down the chain, losing 5 games in a row puts you in relegation bother. So there's just always peril, and managers, as fans, we would much rather see someday a midfield made up of 2 players on $6,000 a week each. Like say Hearts, for instance. Yeah. Much rather, maybe Hearts average wage is bumped up now. Let's say 7. Let's say you would much rather have 2 players on. Actually, that doesn't round up. Hang on, let me just do some quick maths in my head here. Just right. Let's go for 8. So let's go for 8.
Okay.
So in a midfield 4, fans would much rather have 2 players at like $7,000 a week, and 2 players on $1,000 a week because they're young players coming through, and that'd be the midfield. And so you're excited about the young players coming through, and you're also excited about these other guys because they're very good. Like, because if Scottish teams are paying that much money for a player, they at least in theory should be good. I know there's going to get exceptions, and that's another reason, because clubs are scared that they invest so much in something like that and they don't work out, then it's this big albatross that hangs around their head. But managers, and I think clubs themselves, would rather, so that is 16,000 overall. I think they would much rather have 4 players on $4,000 a week each.
Mm-hmm. Solid pros.
And hope that 1 or 2 of them play above their station and the other 2 play at their station. And that's not as fun.
No. Yeah, I mean, we do these transfer pods, and when you're sort of reviewing all the signings that clubs make, I mean, it's very obvious that it's a lot of the clubs go for a very slightly scattergun approach, and it is a straight back thing, because they don't trust themselves, so they're not willing to put eggs like a lot of eggs in one basket, because they don't trust that player will actually be good. So they just sign loads of players in the assumption that, well, there's probably going to be something serviceable in amongst all that, and it's like, that's and because managers just love signing players. Yeah, managers always want more and more players. Really, there's very few managers that ever talk about having to wanting to reduce the size of the squad and things like that. Just doesn't. Managers just don't think that way most of the time, and yeah, they're just. That's a big another big problem. That does just lead to sort of progression blockers within squads, which just is a poor use of resources for Scottish football, which can't really afford to be like that, I would say. But so yeah, I mean, and you do wonder if I mean, for all we talk about your managers being very cautious and having being scared of their jobs and stuff, you do wonder if you actually if you were a bit bolder, someone might be very successful, both tactically and in terms of squad building. That might actually you probably have an edge there that other managers aren't trying to do, and other clubs aren't trying to do. But it takes being quite brave to do that. There's just, because I mean, what managers in the league this season in the top flight haven't been in danger of being sacked at some point? There's very few. I mean, Naismith is solid now, but there's a time
definitely
wasn't at all.
Right, so
and then Stephen, most other managers have been sacked. So
I would say Stephen Robinson, Derek McInnes, probably a stretch to say Rodgers, but he was starting to look a bit troublesome. But I don't think he was ever really under.
I think he's still on the balance, because I mean, if Celtic don't win the league, I think
he is. So there is. Let's actually discount Rodgers, because there's certainly points, and there's still a point right now where if he loses his next game and Rangers win their next game, he is going to be under serious pressure. Right, so who else in the... Oh, Tony Docherty's not been under any pressure. Rangers have changed their managers. Hibs have changed their managers. Kettlewell's been under pressure. Aberdeen have changed their managers. Ross County have changed their manager. St Johnstone have changed their manager. David Martindale
would be sacked if it wasn't a normal situation.
Yeah, so you're talking four managers in the entire league, or 4 clubs that this season haven't had a manager be under pressure or have been sacked this campaign, and one of them doesn't really count because it's Martindale and he basically runs Livingston.
Yeah, and even someone like Robinson, if St Mirren managed to drop out of the top 6, for example, there probably would be. I mean, I'm not saying that St Mirren would.
I just don't think it's happened this season. They started off well, and they had a wee bit of a. There was that defeat at Livy where he was kind of arguing with a supporter, but I don't think he was under any kind of pressure really.
No,
if they drop out of the top 6, yes, but that's a bit of a hypothetical.
Yeah, and so you need to be having and St Mirren are having probably their best. Well, if they make the top 6 again, that's like their 2 best consecutive seasons in 40, 50 years or something like that. So you have to be achieving to a historic level as a club to not see the manager be under pressure. Basically, is what we're talking about.
Kelly have only finished 4th 3 times in 20 years or something.
Yeah, this is the best Kelly team other than the Steve Clark team that there's been in Donkeys as well. So maybe Kenny Shields' team I suppose won a cup and was top 6 as well. But this Kilmarnock team is exceptional for Kilmarnock, and that's what it requires to not be under pressure. You just don't want this. Scottish football has main character syndrome, and that nobody wants to be the main character of Scottish football. And if you're the main character in Scottish football, then there always is one, and it's quite often Jim Goodwin. But it's there's this you just don't want to be that, because everyone is all of a sudden everybody's interested in your next game. All of a sudden
there's some exceptions. I would say Ange was a bit of an exception, and Rodgers in his first spell where it was positive and he was the main character.
Yeah.
But even Stephen, even Hearts winning all those games in a row. Stephen Naismith wasn't even the main character of Hearts.
No, exactly. Yeah. Naismith got almost 0 credit for that. And I still I talked to Hearts fans outside of the lads on the podcast, and I just I'm not that sure about that Naismith. I still think there's an undercurrent of they're ready to turn like that.
That's just because people just hate admitting they're wrong.
You have admitted.
Yeah, I think I've got my many flaws as a human being and as a podcaster and as whatever else you want to call me. But I do like to think that I can admit when I'm wrong. And I was wrong about Stevie Naismith, but a lot of people hate to admit that they're wrong.
Yes, so there's
I hate being wrong, but when I know I am wrong, I admit it.
Doesn't happen to me, obviously, because I'm never wrong. But if it seems like I'm wrong, I've just not been proven correct yet. But yeah, so I think that is the managers do manage with fear, and that's ultimately I think that's what it comes back to, and I think there are structural reasons for that. I wonder even the structure of the lower leagues. I mean, you'd have to think how many managers in the top flight have managed in the lower leagues at some point. But if there was that sort of conveyor belt, then I mean, there's a few there. Kettlewell was in. He managed.
But Kettlewell went down with County. We've been talking this a lot recently that people think that you manage in the lower leagues and then you come up to the Premiership.
Doesn't actually happen that often.
But it doesn't actually happen that often. If you think about the examples, I'm sure Kettlewell was in charge when they went down and he was just given a chance, and he was co-manager at the time to bring them back up, and then he was sacked before they nearly went down again. Derek McInnes managed in the Championship, but that managed a Killie team that was very heavily expected to win that league.
Managed St Johnstone as well back in the day.
Oh, so he did, yes. So McInnes is, I forgot about the St Johnstone spell. McInnes is one. Right, let's go through them. Robinson, no. Naismith, no. Who is Tony Dock? No. Nick Montgomery? No. who else? Aberdeen, they don't have a manager. Levine started at Cowdenbeath, that was a long time ago. David Martindale's an example. No, actually, David Martindale technically is not an example, even though he really should be.
Yeah.
Because he was basically the manager of Livingston for a lot of time before he was officially the manager of Livingston. But he actually doesn't count either. And I think I feel like it's a club I keep forgetting.
It's obviously Rangers and Celtic.
Yeah, Rangers and Celtic, obviously. But is there anybody else in the? No, I think we've covered everybody. Yeah, so again, not many.
Not that many. But yeah, you see, I mean, I suppose like Goodwin's maybe an example of that, and that Goodwin came through the obviously Alloa, and he because I suppose like young managers coming into it. I mean, what are you either go abroad and bring in a foreign manager, or you appoint somebody like a Naismith who's you maybe is probably you have to be a big name. So you have to be like a Maloney or a Naismith, a guy who's played for Scotland, to get probably the fact that your first senior job being in the top flight, and you also have to have been part of probably in the youth setup most of the time. Prior to that, like a Barry Robson being another example of that, and then get a caretaker gig and then make it from there. So that's one sort of pathway. But the other pathway would be, if you're in that sort of tier below of sort of solid pros that are trying to make as a manager, like a like a Jim Goodwin, or you can even maybe even say like a Robbie Nielsen back in the day. You're probably going to have to get a job in out with top flight. Obviously, Robbie Nielsen was Hearts, but still, it was in the lower leagues. And the lower leagues are like an even more extreme example of like their competitiveness.
Yeah.
And that might then you go into the Premier League with that.
You do get a lot more young players getting game time though in the lower leagues than they do in the top flight. I would say I haven't crunched the numbers, but just from looking at it, that seems to be the case.
Yes, but that would just be pure budget. You would have thought.
But again, like you talk about the top flight, and it's like there's no.
Yeah,
but I suppose they're forced into it because if you are a part-time team, part-time team as well. But if you are a full-time team, probably is a better example. You need to put young players in the squad because it's if you're clinging on. And some clubs, I think maybe too many clubs in Scotland do this. Cling on to this full-time status. Mm-hmm. You can only pay, but if you've only got an average attendance of 1,000 to 1,500. It's like you can't really afford to do that. So what you have to do is you pay some players very small wages, and then you put in a lot of young players to keep that status.
Yeah. You basically have to get players that are still willing to live with their parents, I imagine.
Yes,
because otherwise they wouldn't be able to live on the wage you're paying them. But in terms of the football, that's probably more relevant, like tactically and stuff like that, rather than the young players. But I think it does all bleed together in terms of that competitive nature, which. We all love it, especially in the lower leagues, especially. But does it lead to the best quality of football? Probably not. But how good's the quality ever going to be in the fourth tier?
Yeah,
it's not going to be great.
We're getting a bit sidetracked here, so let me just pull us back before we finish. So, is there some way? So, if we don't want to get rid of the competitiveness, I don't want to. I like the leagues like it. I like the constant storylines. Yeah, it might not lead to the best brand of football all the time, but I do prefer it. Give me a choice of all these things we've talked about. I want the competitiveness in my Scottish football leagues. I want there to be riding on something every time you go into a weekend, that the game matters. Like Hearts, example of that, Hearts are doing, have been excellent, and I've enjoyed going to the games during the stretch, but I live in a different city now, so I'm looking at next Saturday's game against Killie, and I'm like, do I need to go to that? We're probably winning. We're still playing. We lost last time out, but we're still playing reasonably well overall, a form in 2024. But I'm like, I will go to it because there's a slight edge with Kelly who could maybe get 8 points behind us and put the pressure on if they win that game. But it's still kind of if there are just end of season matches, I don't know how many times I'm going to be arsed going along to the game, especially since I have to do a bit of travel. If I still lived in just up the road for Gorgie, I would obviously go, but it's just a bit different. But in terms of, if we want to keep the competitiveness, is there somewhere we can meet in the middle where if it doesn't improve by itself in the next couple of years and it's still an issue and clubs are still acting the way they are and haven't really adjusted for English teams coming and picking up some 16-year-olds and them to kind of give that promise that there are going to be more pathways, etc., etc. And also fan pressure is kind of ramping up a bit when it comes to young players as well. On an individual level, not so much on a national level, but certainly on an individual club-by-club basis. is there something that the rule makers can do? Because we have had this before. I think it was just done very half-heartedly. So the rule before was that you had to have, 2 players under the age of 21?
On the bench, yeah.
But it was just, you had to have them on the bench. It was like...
They didn't need to play at all, yeah.
Yeah, that was so short-sighted and so stupid, really. It was stupid. And the managers complained about it. It was like, that it's actually detrimental because I'd send them out on loan, but I need them. I need them for my squad to be eligible to play this game. That was so dumb. But you could do something like that, but make it a bit more extreme. Say, why don't you just there needs to be a player in your first team, 20 or younger. There needs to be a player in the starting 11 every game, 20 or younger, who is eligible to play for Scotland. What about that? If it's still, it's an extreme thing, and I don't want to really see it happen. But if this is a problem in a few years, and if we start to see the Scottish talent pool drying up, and we're like, okay, we need to give more of these young players a chance, then I think that is something that you could
what I would suggest doing, and you'd have to give you'd have to give a couple of years before you imposed it, to give clubs a chance to organise the squads properly. But I would just say, as they almost have in England, I would say you're limited to 25 players and have the same rules that UEFA have for a European squad, which means you can only have, I think it's you can have 25 players, but 4 of them have to be through the youth academy and 4 of them have to be nation homegrown. And the rest can be from wherever. So you're then limited to 17, 18 pros from elsewhere, and then the rest of it is has to be sort of youth or and beneath that you can play as many sort of players. I think it's under the age of 20. I think they're in UEFA terms of B list, so you can just they can just play without having to be named on a squad.
Yeah,
that would be what I would suggest, because that would it would force the clubs to not just stockpile loads of players for no reason. I actually, just from a purely selfish Rangers perspective, I wish we'd do that, because it would mean that we wouldn't be carrying it, because Rangers always have players on a fortune that aren't they can't even play in Europe because just signed too many players. It would force all the clubs to actually properly organise their squads, I think. And it would mean, because I always think it's getting away from, I think, the tokenism thing, and I think there's a slight danger of that. Even if you said you have to start someone, there's a danger of players playing when they're not quite ready, or we're just going to have to, and I think that's sort of, people don't like it because it doesn't feel meritocratic. Whereas in this way, it's everybody has to do it, and it's across all the squads, and it is meritocratic then, because it's not there are only a certain amount of senior pros. If you maybe it's the case that young players don't play because they're not good enough, because they're the 24th and 25th men, and they're not good enough to even make the bench. But so be it, because they've got to be better than the senior pros that are there. But by reducing the amount of senior pros every club can carry, that just naturally will create opportunities for younger players in a more organic way than just sort of having to have them on the bench or having to have them in the squad. So I mean, if clubs can go through a season and have no suspensions, no injuries, and just all the senior boys play, that could happen, but it's unlikely. It's likely that chances arise in a sort of a more organic, natural way, I think, if you structure the squads like that.
Right, Euan, I think that'll do us. Did you think we'd talk about this for 50 minutes?
Probably, yeah, I did actually. So, yeah, I thought that may happen.
I'm always such an optimist. I'm always thinking 20, 30 minutes. We'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, edit it down to
it takes
a nice 5.
Try and find bits to cut out and take them out actually takes longer than just putting the full thing up.
So
there you go. Then you're welcome, YouTube users. Play it on ×2 speed if you want. I won't be offended.
Yeah, I will be, but okay, fine.
Right, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this video/audio podcast from the Terrace Podcast. If you are watching us on YouTube and you have not subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button as we can continue to grow on this platform, as we only joined it this season. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, we thoroughly appreciate your continued support of the podcast, and we will talk to you again soon. Goodbye.